All right, I'd like to go ahead and talk just a little bit now about some of the battles and some of the wars that America fought to gain a lot of its western territory, specifically the southwestern United States. Most of the territory that today we consider the southwestern United States came as a result of two different conflicts that America fought in. The first is the Revolution and eventual annexation of Texas, and the second, the Mexican American War. We'll go ahead and address the Revolution in Texas first. The revolution in Texas really begins when Mexico, which controlled what today we call Texas, offers land to settlers. Initially, they were trying to go ahead and attract settlers from Mexico further northward into their northern territories, but actually, very few folks from Mexico took the government up on the offer. Rather, who took them up on the offer were Americans, folks from the United States, who came and applied for a position called an impresario, which was basically like an agent for the Mexican government charged with handing out the land in Texas. The most successful of these impresarios was a gentleman by the name of Stephen F. Austin, of course, whom the city of Austin, Texas is named today. And so he's sanctioned by the Mexican government to go ahead and hand out land grants, and he does so to a lot of folks back from the United States. And so, as a result, as more and more Americans move to Texas, Texas actually gains closer ties to the United States than it does to Mexico. Mexico realizes this and is like, oh, shoot, we think we might have made a mistake. They try to close off immigration between the U.S. and Mexico. They try to say that, hey, you have to speak Spanish. And a lot of the folks who were there, who had put a lot of time and effort into developing their ranches and different things, were upset about this. And so they begin to go ahead and complain to the Mexican government. In particular, a gentleman by the name of Santa Anna, who at the time was the Mexican president. And he really doesn't believe that Mexico can handle democracy the way that the Texans were wanting to participate. And so he kind of tries to tamp down some of the expectations of the Texans. And the Texans don't like this. And so they begin to rebel. Probably the most notable battle in the Texas Revolution was the Alamo. It's actually a loss for the Texans, but they hold out against a much larger Spanish force in this old Spanish mission, a Spanish church, if you will. It's in modern day San Antonio. The guy in charge for the Texans was a guy named William Travis. But in the end, it's a Mexican victory. Santa Anna defeats the forces at the Alamo, and he actually, all the people who defended the Alamo died there. Nonetheless, despite being really a victory for Mexico, it really is the rallying cry. It's the thing that really kind of solidifies forces around the Texas Revolution and spurs the Texans to fight even harder for their revolution or for their independence. And they will eventually win their independence in March of 1836 at a place called the Battle of San Jacinto. They were led by a guy by the name of Sam Houston, for whom Houston, the city, is named. And they win because they capture Santa Anna, and they force him basically to sign a treaty, basically giving them their independence. Mexico always disagreed with the validity of this treaty. They didn't feel like it was legitimately negotiated, and so they wanted to try to ignore it. And it's for that reason that when Texas wins its independence, they go ahead and ask to become a state, and we say no because we're not wanting to, at that time, risk an open war with Mexico. And so for a time, Texas remains an independent nation. However, eventually, Texas will be annexed by the United States. A new president comes along. He's open to the idea. A guy by the name of James Polk. And Mexico's government is a little bit concerned about this. And so there's always this dispute about where exactly the border of Texas was. The Texans claimed it was the Rio Grande, and the Mexican government claimed, I believe it was the Nacogdoches River, which there's a difference there of several hundred miles. And so they were going back and forth, and the president at the time, James Polk, says, you know what, no. The Texans have a pretty legitimate case that the border should be the Rio Grande, so he orders troops to the Rio Grande River. Well, Mexico views this as an invasion. James Polk says, no, I'm just ordering American troops onto American soil, no invasion here. But it's that provocation where James Polk orders troops down to the Rio Grande that really kicks off the Mexican-American War. Some of the generals who were prominent in that, a guy by the name of Stephen Kearny, Kearny moves west into New Mexico, Arizona, and he will be the one who eventually moves to California, which had declared its independence as the Bear Flag Republic under a guy by the name of John Fremont. and Kearny goes ahead and moves through Mexican territory westward. But the generals who really go ahead and move south into what today we call Mexico are two guys, Winfield Scott and Zachary Taylor. Two very different generals. Winfield Scott, very formal, liked all the pomp and circumstance of the office. They had a nickname for him, Old Fuss and Feathers. He's always worried about his uniform, but nonetheless a pretty capable general. The guy who's probably more capable still is a guy by the name of Zachary Taylor. Kind of different. He was the opposite. He was kind of the soldier's general. He wasn't afraid to get down and get dirty with the soldiers. He usually didn't dress very well, and they called him Old Rough and Ready. That was his nickname. And he was pretty popular amongst the soldiers. And in fact, so popular and so good relating to people, he would later become a president himself and parlay his fame that he gains through the battle with Mexico into political success. The war finally ends with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and as a result of that, we established our southern border at the Rio Grande, which is what kind of Texas had always said it was, and the United States agrees to pay Mexico $15 million in exchange for New Mexico, which will also include Arizona, and California. And so really this extends our border all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, which was where we kind of thought it was going to go with Manifest Destiny. The final piece of what today is our southern border will fall into place with the Gadsden Purchase of 1853, and with that, our southern border along California, along with today is Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, that entire border with Mexico is firmly established.